Before we continue, understand this podcast is for adults only and refers to relationships and activities between adults which are voluntary and consensual. If you or anyone you know is being abused, coerced, or violently aggressed against, please reach out for help to the appropriate authorities. Hello and welcome. Gorean Voice, Episode 18. Gore and Health and Medicine. Let's talk about health, medicine, etc., both as it relates to the fictional world of gore, and as it may relate to living a gore-inspired lifestyle here on planet Earth. Let's start with the counter-Earth, though. On gore, most technologies are artificially limited by the Priest King's controls. I've gone into much of the why and a little of the how this is done in previous episodes. Let's just say the Priest Kings want things a certain way. Call it an aesthetic preference. The bow is the upper limit of projectile weaponry. Iron Age metallurgy is the pinnacle of material science, and high-speed communications require riders on swift-winged giant birds to deliver messages. Yet there is one aspect of technological sophistication which appears to be far beyond our own: medicine. Of course, we'll suspend our understanding of interdisciplinary scientific collaboration and believe for a moment that medical science may advance to such a degree in isolation of other scientific and engineering disciplines. So put down the lab coats, welding glasses, and step away from the Tesla coil. So however it came about, the state of the art of Gorean medicine is quite advanced when it comes to disease prevention and aging. They refer to this medicine as the stabilization serums. The Gorean tradition of excellence and refusing to accept defeat is referred to in the background information given to explain the genesis of this anti-aging technology. Gorean physicians simply refuse to accept aging as distinct from other diseases and proceeded to cure it. Sometimes the proof rock technique of raging against the dying of the light actually works. It's worth noting that, like many medical interventions we Earthlings would consider routine, in a small percentage of Goreans, the stabilization serums are ineffective, and in a tiny percentage of cases, they have an adverse reaction, which ranges from debilitating to fatal. I can't imagine, though, that an anti-serum faction getting too sentimental about long lifespans being an abomination, though. I doubt that there is much of a movement to stop the serums culturally on gore. So this approach to defining the bounds of illness contrasts sharply with the Gorean approach to one disease in particular, darkosis. It is described variably, but symptoms and transmission seem to center on something of a Gorean analog to the earthly disease of leprosy. Its closest semblance to leprosy, though, is in the beliefs about the disease. Leprosy was once believed by some to be a divine retribution for sinful behavior, and there were taboos built up around shunning lepers. Some of these taboos even make appearances in some of the oldest and most widely read pieces of literature on this planet, the Talmud and the Bible, and the Redeemer himself breaks some of these taboos. In the Gorean novels, darkosis is believed by many to be a visitation upon transgressors by the displeased priest kings. When this belief is mentioned by a character of high caste, this belief is usually described by the character himself as a belief, rather than asserted as a fact. Skeptical as they may be in this regard, Members of the physician's caste are, depending on who you speak, either forbidden or strongly discouraged from interfering with the will of the priest-kings on the matter, and in polite Gorean society, researching a cure for this disease is quite taboo. In Book 5, Assassins of Gore, a physician named Flaminius, an ally of the main character, refers both to the curing of aging and the taboo for curing darkosis in the same conversation, with pride for the former and shame for the latter on his own and his caste's behalf. He has made something of an attempt to move the needle on the matter of darkosis, but this resulted in a violent intrigue at the hands of the initiates, the religious authorities. This birthed in him the cynicism and resignation necessary to put his considerable medical skill to a much lower end. He became chief physician to a major slave trading enterprise. There are some other peculiar aspects of human biology that seem to have been mastered, or at least harnessed by Gorean medical science in many Gorean cultures. Apparently, slave breeding houses have managed to breed extremely attractive women with certain topical traits that go far beyond the typical range in earthly women. There is also mention of women bred with a poisonous kiss. On the topic of family planning, the author cleverly invented a one-shot beverage that renders a woman incapable of conceiving until such time as she is administered with the antidote in a later month or year if, and only if, her owner would like to make use of her womb. This is called slave wine, and I'll trust that Gorean physicians or shamans or whomever invented such a concoction has a better understanding of female endocrinology than our own earthly physicians. We earthbound men, in the meantime, must continue to chart a course for the women we own, riding the same lunar waves that Mother Nature has pushed her way, or try out the brave new world of consequences for messing with poorly understood hormones. There are few mentions of individuals afflicted with various birth defects. In the case of Scormus of R, a well-known Kaisa champion, he is otherwise healthy, but is somehow lame or hobbled since birth. In the case of Hup the Fool, he is misshapen in several ways, and is described piteously. While it's likely that Scormus, as a professional, could afford the finest medical treatment, the physicians of Gore's most magnificent city could do no more for him than for the destitute beggar Hup. Since this book is over a half-century old, I'm not afraid to spoil the fact that Hup is Scormus's father. So the state-of-the-art of Gorean medical science may have solved many issues at the cellular level, but the repair of physical damage or malformations is either beyond its reach or somehow subject to some taboo or other. While this taboo is an affront to my humanitarian and philanthropic instinct, John Norman is in fine company as a sci-fi fantasy author in this case. Frank Herbert wrote that the tribal society known as the Fremen in the Dune books had a tradition of abandoning the blind in the desert, regardless of how they were blinded, even though in that setting there is the technology to restore someone's eyesight by way of prosthetics, and possibly other means. The protagonist of the first book and a half of that series breaks that taboo in two ways. During the culmination of the military conflict, several of his allies are blinded in the battle. Rather than having them abandoned in the desert, he orders that they be given Tleilaxu eyes. The Tleilaxu are a technologically advanced faction which can produce ocular implants. The other way he breaks the taboo is that later in his story he is himself blinded. Yet, being the Messiah and all, he both A, sees through his recently born children's eyes and outmaneuvers an opponent during a physical confrontation, and B, he can determine where everything is that matters anyhow, due to his Mentat/Kosat's Haderach powers. I won't geek out too hard on the Dune series. We're talking about Gore here. Now, I have a slightly critical reading of the name of this incurable disease. Darkosis? Ugh, it sounds a little like the name of a Star Wars villain. Well, I love it when sci-fi and fantasy authors invent a language and cough up dozens of proper nouns for place names, etc. I don't rank this particular coinage as among John Norman's finest. More important than the minutiae of a fictional culture's state of medical science is that fictional culture's approach to health in a much broader sense. At every opportunity, Gore is described, especially by visitors from Earth, as a healthier place to be. The air is fresher, and filled not with the products of an industrial society such as brake dust and paint fumes, but filled with the fragrances of wild flowers, plants, beasts, salty ocean air, etc. It's as if breathing this air will make someone 2 inches taller, lose their allergies, and cure their ulcer. The lifestyle is described as being much more suitable for the maintenance of bodily health. Goreans do a lot more walking than we Earthmen, and engage in sport, combat, and other physical pursuits in much greater measure than we decadent moderns do. Other than salting meats or baking things, food appears to be in whole unprocessed forms. The combination of a healthier culture, healthier environment, and advanced medicine seems to have resulted in a much more physically attractive population as a whole. Picture beautiful lithe maidens kneeling before muscular he-men, just as the good Lord intended. Interestingly enough, in this world where it would seem that every man has a reason, the genes, and the means to cultivate a healthy aesthetic physique, there are still male characters beset by vices that render them into the type of character who would be played by Danny DeVito in a film adaptation. Karnas, the antagonist of Book 5, comes to mind. He is described as fat, vain, vile, petty, vicious, capricious, bejeweled, and effeminate. Exactly the stereotype of a politically powerful, yet physically pathetic character, such as Lord Farquaad from the film Shrek, and exactly the sort of person the Priest Kings seem to be trying to breed out of our species. So perhaps John Norman was leaning a little too heavily on stereotypes here with some of the other villains. But I'm going to go with a different take. What I think he was really trying to do, or to say, was that even when all is arranged for the maximum human physical flourishing, vices such as gluttony, sloth, and wrath are ineradicable and must be guarded against. That goes double for us Earth people. What, though, is an Earthman of Gorean temperament to do with himself? I think cultivating a body that is not merely not falling apart, but is teeming with vitality is, well, vital. This might be easier for me to say than most. I'm not yet at the age where my slave girl will start dyeing my hairs gray while I sleep, but it's easier said than done for anyone. There really is no excuse for any man here on Earth not to be the best version of himself. It's a different sort of challenge, though, than our fictional Gorean cousins have. They have to contend with genuine physical challenges. We have to contend with managing our modern lives and schedules properly to insert artificial physical challenges, and then contend with those challenges also. Heavy is the hand that holds the smartphone. Same goes for the inputs. Our fictional Gorean cousins have to choke down fresh, whole foods and go hungry when food isn't available. In order to derive benefits, such as cellular apoptosis, from intermittent fasting, we need to do a little artful scheduling and resist the temptation to eat outside of our window. Indeed, our affliction is prosperity and ease. Perhaps that's why too many Westerners have a Karnas the Slaver rather than a Tarl the Tarnsman physique. I'm speaking to the men here. We are, or aspire to the position of leadership in our relationships. If you want your woman to kneel before you and be in great shape, whip her into shape or find one who's already in shape. But either way, we absolutely need to have this part of our lives sorted out. There is no excuse. You want to master your woman? Sounds great to me. There are so many facets of a man's life, and it will be better if you master all of them. But fitness and health is the closest to home. Now, I have the privilege of being sought as something of a mentor to many of my fellow men. Once we schedule a call, frequently I get bombarded with a list of all the things that are going wrong in this man's life. My job sucks, my car sucks, I've got no money, I'm morbidly obese, and women look at me like I'm a pathetic dog. Frequently, the morbidly obese part just gets glazed over like it's just another thing on the long list. It's not just another thing. It's the thing. With these men, I simply instruct them on how to get in shape, and that I don't want to hear about their other problems until after they've lost the weight. In a podcast I enjoy listening to called Infinite Devotion about dom-sub relationships, this requirement for physical self-mastery on the part of the dominant is repeated many times. This makes me happy, means a lot to me, since the ID podcast is very much on the safe, sane, and consensual end of the spectrum, where I'm more towards the dangerous cult leader end. As you can see, the message is the same, regardless of where you fall. For me personally, I'm happy with how it feels to be inside my body, and what it looks like in the mirror, but I'm never satisfied. Different things work for different men, so I won't go into much detail about my routine. I eat whole foods as much as possible, keep my eating inside an 8-hour window, I get enough sleep, I work out intensely 6 days a week, and do lots of flexibility work. There was a time when I had a job that demanded an elite level of physical fitness, and I was competing in MMA. But at this phase of my life, I'm happy to just stay dangerous, stay flexible, keep the weight off, and keep a few skills up. I don't quite look like a Greek statue anymore, but I haven't strayed too far. Keeping the body in good shape isn't quite as simple as it used to be, but it's worth it. Unfortunately, in most places in the West, the mainstream medical system isn't going to be of much help in the enterprise of making oneself into a formidable male specimen, overflowing with vitality and virility. And it's going to cost some dough. I recently went in for routine blood work with my normal doctor, who pronounced me extremely healthy. However, when I pressed him for more detailed blood work, wanting to check my hormone levels, etc., he simply said that there's nothing to worry about. Well, I'm not worried, but I'm concerned. This is my only body we're talking about here. As such, in addition to going to my GP, which is covered by my insurance, I also go to an IV lounge and get a much more comprehensive blood work panel done regularly. Additionally, the staff at these types of places understand that clients are not merely interested in staying alive, but are interested in optimizing the body's performance. As such, rather than just checking a few cholesterol-related figures, the blood work that I pay out of pocket for has about 60 rows on the results spreadsheets. And this doctor goes over each one individually. We discuss how to optimize each one with diet, specific practices such as fasting, sleep timing, cold immersion therapy, and if necessary, supplementation. This doctor never says, "You're in the normal range, so don't worry about that one," because he knows that normal in our sickly, obesogenic, estrogenic, diabetic culture and environment is not good at all. He knows that I don't care what the average is. He knows that I want to optimize each one of those numbers for me. Men, this is a part of life that is worth spending some shekels on. Obviously, I don't know about your financial situation, but if you have room in your budget for Netflix or Starbucks, you can certainly spend a little money and effort improving your health right down to the cells. Even if you're not in a position right now to shell out for fancy blood work, there are many diet and lifestyle interventions that one can learn about for free. Next time you're going for a long drive, download a few podcasts on men's hormone optimization or sleep optimization or the benefits and instructions for intermittent fasting. Most of the optimization practices are cheap or free. Don't start out buying the fancy gadgets and health gizmos. Start out with straightening out your sleeping and eating schedule, cleaning up that diet, moving that body more, and sitting much less. We don't have the benefit of Gorean stabilization serums, but our cells are quite impressive on their own. We can walk around in a sleep-deprived, high body fat, low muscle tone body that looks like it's about to fall apart. Or we may walk around in a body that is overflowing with vitality, that appears impressive to the eye, and that will last you substantially longer. Women also have a much easier time bending those knees of theirs in front of such men, but that's not all there is to look forward to if you're not there yet. One of the reasons I work out constantly is that I want to play with my great-grandkids someday. I don't want to sit in a chair while they play. I want to play with them. Show them how old great-grandpa here can still stick the landing on a backflip and crank out a few perfect pull-ups. Well, then I'll sit down probably. There are some men who have suffered grievous wounds in traumatic accidents, who get cancer, or who through no fault of their own were born with some condition that won't allow them to achieve an aesthetic masculine physique. If you're not one of those people, be grateful for your health. Be aggressively grateful. It doesn't do your wheelchair-bound cousin any good to live life as if you're in a wheelchair too. Pick up heavy things and put them down. Become physically excellent, like it's your sacred family duty. Shine where he can't and light the way for both of you. John Norman himself is working his way through his 10th decade of life. At some point, keeping on the right side of the ground itself is a daily victory. But I'm as certain as I can be that if his readers are going to emulate the Gorean approach to life, he wants the men to stand to their full height, fill their lungs with fresh air, and cultivate the physicality of an apex predator, and bound from one exploit or endeavor to another with the grace of a leopard, and not slouch lazily, looking downward at some glass rectangle, and shuffling our feet pathetically from one juvenile indulgence to the next. It does men in their 90s no favors for young men to act like we're in our 90s. If you're ready to optimize your body, I highly recommend listening to or reading some of the works of Dr. Peter Attia, that's Attia, and Dr. Andrew Huberman. There are many other resources out there, but these two I believe are the best. They both have popular podcasts, and it's never a waste of time to pump that through your ears on long drives or while raking the leaves or bringing in the groceries. Take it seriously. I judge men who aren't in shape. We all do, I just admit it. If a man who is obese has something to say, I pretty much can't hear it over the loudness that is his poorly maintained body. Whatever wisdom he has to offer on any topic will pretty much fall on deaf ears as soon as you see him. This is not fair, it's not polite, it's not nice, but it is nonetheless true. And this instinct to take people seriously who appear to take their health seriously, and to do the converse, is not going to go away, no matter how many bust-up ads are published about fat phobia, fat discrimination, sizeism, body positivity, etc. That stuff is for girls. Men, we don't get a break, and we should be embarrassed if we want one. You may have noticed that I pretty much only talk to men about their health and fitness. Pan, what about the ladies? Well, for those ladies who are fortunate enough to have their throats secured by steel or titanium, the whip hand should take care of that. Your care and feeding is your master's responsibility. If you aren't being managed correctly, respectfully take it up with him. Well, thanks for listening today. I gotta get out there and get my workout done. So lasses, throw out a piece of junk food today. It belongs in the garbage. And make something real from scratch. Serve it to your master if you have one, or post it on FetLife if you don't. You caption that picture, "I can't wait to cook these for you, master," and I'm sure a band of steel will find its way about your throat. Lads, don't let up. Keep those women on their knees, their backs, and their toes, but don't let up with the whip hand. Most importantly, don't behave as if you yourself need to be goaded. Get off your own ass and do the work. Eat clean, pick up heavy things and put them down. You owe this to your ancestors, your descendants, and to the men who literally can't rise to the occasion. In a future episode, I'll be taking a much closer look at the topic of whether one can be religious and Gorean at the same time. I've never mentioned my own approach to spirituality on this podcast before. Maybe I'll get around to it. However, please join me again next week, where I'll be taking a deep dive into the topic of hand signals and other wordless commands. Until then, fair winds.